Beyond the Hedges. I'm your host, David Mansouri, and today we're talking about music at Rice and beyond with Miguel Harth-Bedoya. Harth-Bedoya is an Emmy award-winning and Grammy-nominated conductor, celebrating 35 years of professional conducting and with a deep commitment to passing his experience on to the next generation of musicians. He's been appointed Distinguished Resident Director of Orchestras and Professor of Conducting at the Shepherd School of Music at Rice University, a position that will start in the 2025-2026 school year. Through the end of the 2024-2025 school year, he's on faculty at Baylor University, where he's the Mary Franks Thompson Director of Orchestral Studies and Music Director of the Baylor Symphony Orchestra. He has conducted orchestras and led productions of operas across the world. This fall, he made his debut at the Metropolitan Opera with Osvaldo Golohov's Ainada Mar. Born and raised in Peru, Harth-Bedoya received both of his degrees in orchestral conducting from the Curtis Institute of Music and from the Juilliard School, both under the guidance of Otto Werner Müller. He also received an honorary doctorate degree from Texas Christian University. Miguel, as a Shepherd School alum myself, it's a real treat to talk to you today. Thank you for being with us, and congratulations on your really important appointment at the Shepherd School.
Thank you, David, and thank you for having me and having this conversation.
Great. So I want to start our conversation really kind of at the beginning for you and ask you, how did you become interested in music? How did you become interested in becoming a professional conductor? Tell us a little bit about maybe your early interest in music and your professional path.
Let me put things in context, particularly for the younger generation that wouldn't connect the dots. So I was born and raised in Lima, Peru. And this is, as I was growing up, this is in the 70s, when Peru was a communist country. Yeah, and we were isolated from the rest of the world. Now, that changed in 1980, but my first 12 years of life were in a secluded country, far, because the Southern Hemisphere is far, even when now we are connected through the internet, it's still far away from places. My mom is a musician. She's a freelance musician, and she's like the queen of the gigs. That's how she was called. And mainly she would hire music for weddings or ceremonies, receptions, but weddings was like the thing, you know, and music is such an important role on that. So I just grew up with my mom and one sister, and we grew up with my grandmother. So what I heard was live sounds from my mom's musicians that she would hire, you know, either singers, violins. I mean, she had like a menu of you know, when she had clients, what would you like to walk with, and so on and so forth. So I just grew up hearing that. And nobody knows to this date when my mom or my grandmother decided to put me on piano lessons. Now, learning a musical instrument back then in Latin America, it was the most common thing. Every single member of the family would play an instrument. So that when you had family gatherings, you just make music. Everybody picks up the guitar, the violin, the trumpet, the piano, whatever it was. So it was nothing out of the ordinary. And my sister, you know, picked up the guitar, and she became a classical guitarist. Then time goes by, and at age 14 or so, around that time, my mom was asked to help set up the preparation for Carmen. Such an opera had never, you know, been done in Peru, and operas were not done. Now, zarzuelas, Spanish zarzuelas, have a huge tradition in Spain. So the singing and the dancing is very much part of our culture. But this was like unheard of. And because of infrastructure or lack of infrastructure, rehearsals were in the living room of my house. So I would come from school and there was somebody in a language that I had no idea what it was. So I got super connected by this, you know, what is this? What is happening? And my mom just, I mean, I tag along basically as I started also helping my mom moving things and carrying things. And that was the first impression I had of any music was Carmen, in a language that I didn't speak. Now, I spoke German because my mom sent me to a German school. So a foreign language was not, you know, uncommon to me. Luckily enough, the year after, we were wrapping up one language and starting studying French more in depth. So I was able to kind of get something out of that experience from the silent. And that was it. So time goes by, and then I got a job in that theater as backstage crew. This is when I'm in the equivalent of junior and senior years. And then the operas had picked up, and Luigi Alva, who had stopped singing, years before, ran the opera company for about 3 months in Lima. And that's when my fascination for music became further, from behind the scenes, and knowing that there was a storyline, singers, characters, an orchestra, modest orchestra, because in Peru we didn't have all the instruments. As a matter of fact, we didn't have a harp player at all. Like, I never heard a harp until I left my country. And so this is all very domestic, but that was my fascination, is the impact that music had. And there was this one time, so I know exactly the one time that it became like, yes, I can do that. Finishing a rehearsal of Tosca, the end of Act 1, I was done with my backstage duties, and because we could never see the shows from behind the scenes, I'm just gonna go and take a look at one of the orchestra dress rehearsals. So I literally walked over the pit, with a plank, so you could go over, and the conductor saw me. Now, mind you, we had been mingling in the cafeteria, everybody knows everybody. So he pulls me out and he says, "Hey, Miguel, come here for a second." And so I go to him in the pit, and he says, "I'd like to hear this from the house. Can you conduct this?" And out of ignorance or bravery, I said, "Yes, of course." And so then I went and conducted the end of Act 1 of Tosca, and the choir is coming out, and they look perplexed, and then Scarpia is like, "What's happening?" And it just went, and it went. And when it went, it's like, wow, I'd like to learn how to do this. It wasn't like, I can do this. So that was the moment, and I was finishing in high school when that happened. And the biggest challenge is, where do I go to study? Because there's nowhere in the country that I can study, what I wanted to. So that was my beginning.
Okay, and then after that, take us a little bit further.
So then, where do I go? To make the story short, had not been for the Curtis Institute of Music, who was basically an open arms institution to review talent. Had I not, gone there, I wouldn't do what I do now. So my teacher, Otto Werner Müller, changed my life forever. And then one thing led to another one. So it was just that, and this is one of the things that we'll talk later, but when I come to Rice, I want to make sure that what I call, there's a door that people can knock at. But that door didn't exist in the whole continent of South America. And this is writing by letters, by mail, to an institution thousands of miles away. It's almost like a movie, months later, the mail comes back, and then I write again in another month before anything can happen. But anyway, that's how it happened. Curtis changed my life, and that's what I want to help others do.
That's great. Okay, so for our listeners who might not have a background in music, I'm wondering if you could describe what the role of a conductor actually is. I feel like sometimes people ask me, could the orchestra do that without a conductor? And I'm curious about how you would answer that question. What is a conductor doing during their performance? What is the conductor listening for? What are they attentive to? What's the conductor doing when he or she is standing at the front of the stage?
Absolutely, it's very clear to explain that, and I'm going to disappoint everybody because the conductors don't do anything. In the process of music making, we're the least important individual. There's the composer, and there are the musicians in the orchestra, and then there's the audience. We are there only to connect the dots. Now, when I say only to connect the dots, it requires certain training and skills to do it. But that's what the conductors do, and sometimes it's invisible. Most of the work we do is behind closed doors, and that would be the equivalent as training, a large team, a football team or a soccer team. Nobody sees the hours and hours of us coaching. Now, I'm coaching the rules of the game, meaning the score that somebody wrote, and every score has different rules of engagement. But this you will understand. Everybody will understand. If we have 10 people, mortals, and we give them recipes like the Great British Baking Show, here, bake. I bet the flavor, even if we all follow the instructions, is not going to be the same. Which means that we all have 2 ears they don't listen to exactly the same level or way. Now, the fact that my ears are available completely for the orchestra as a conductor, I'm slightly higher and I have my ears available. Not every musician has their ears available to everybody else because a lot of their hearing goes first to their own instrument and the rest of their hearing goes to based on where they are seated. So if you're sitting next to a trumpet or in front of a trumpet, you may hear less than if you're next to an instrument of your kind. So basically, I'm listening. What the conductor does, the conductor listens to tones, notes, levels of tone, volume, nuances, notes, pitches, articulations, rhythms, decibels, and most importantly, timbres, also known as colors, which is very strict. Do you hear colors? Yes, I do. And this is not synesthesia. This is literally terms that we do. And that's what we do. And once we hear something coming our way, like that, the sound comes to us, to our ears, then immediately I work with that. So when people think I'm moving, well, I'm not moving. I'm reflecting the nature of the music through me, which means I would have to have studied the music extremely well. Otherwise, I would look like a puppet and not like a person that is fused in music. I don't know if this makes any sense, but that's the best non-musical way I can describe what we do.
So maybe to that last point. So to be a conductor, what are some of the things that you have to understand about the piece that you're conducting, or about the composer that wrote the piece, or the background of the piece itself? Can you pick up a piece of music and know how to conduct it by just reading it, or is there research that goes into conducting a piece of music and sort of painting that picture that you described? You just described.
David, it's like a book. If you read your first Shakespeare play, first of all, it's a play. It's not really meant to be read. It's very strange. Like, oh my goodness, why are they talking so funny to start with? But then the more you read, then you actually start realizing, oh, I need to get myself into the voices of characters and speak internally with a certain rhythm, cadence, pace to understand what I'm reading. Now, if I read something else, let's say, Joyce, it's completely different. I mean, even if you read the words, you still have to read it 20 times to realize what have you just read. Music is just like that. But you have hit one important thing. When I read, I hear it. And now that's a skill that can be developed. I don't listen to recordings to listen to music. But it's the same like anybody. If I present in front of you the letters C-A-T, you know how it sounds and you know what it means. Now, do you know which kind of cat it is? Well, then maybe you need to do a bit of research or go beyond in the context. But it's nothing different than any other sort of reading, learning, understanding process. Same as recipes. There are some people that read the recipes and they're already salivating because this looks so yummy. But if you don't know the ingredients, it may not do anything to you.
What about the history of a piece of music? Right? Is there an example maybe of you might have conducted something a certain way just by looking at the music, but maybe you learned something about the composer or the history of a piece that changed how you thought about it or how you conducted it?
Yes, but that's only by layers. I want to say it's better one way or another, but all composers know that the best way to leave their legacy behind is to put it all tangibly in a piece of paper so that when they're gone and history is gone, and none of the composers many times know what's happening around them. Many composers don't even know the analysis of their works because they just write music. So hopefully 99.9% has been left written. The other part is enhancement, or if you have clues such as a title of a piece, like Prelude à l'après-midi d'un faune, Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun. If that's the first thing you see in your title, you cannot proceed any further until you go through those words. So they're giving you clues already. What do you need to do before continuing forward? If you go to a country and you're on the plane, did you check if you needed a visa? Well, it might be too late. You may be sent back. So you want to know the order of events.
Yeah. One last question, maybe just about the art of conducting and how you think about conducting. How do you build a relationship with or chemistry with the musicians that you're conducting? What does that look like? Are there things that work particularly well, or things that don't work as well in building that chemistry or relationship?
Well, you've hit another big important aspect of what we do is we work with people. And conductors need to remember that we are working with people, not with instruments. These are human beings, and each of them have their own lives, their own emotions, their own feelings, their own knowledge, their own background, and we all are sharing the same piece of music. Now, unfortunately or fortunately, we are the individuals that have to bring unity. And sometimes you have to agree to disagree or have others understand that maybe you did it this way, but I think it's this way. So understanding people's willingness and desire to sound good is number one. I've never encountered any orchestra, from highest level of professional orchestras to civic orchestras, youth orchestras, high school orchestras, middle school orchestras, amateur orchestras, you name it. I've never encountered anyone in which a member of the orchestra doesn't want to sound better. Never. I've never encountered, because it's not a punishment to be sent to play an orchestra. So you have to understand that when things don't go the way you want them immediately or after a certain sequence of events, it's not that people are doing it willingly. So if we don't understand that, we're going to get very frustrated. Our point to be made is to take you from A to B to C to D, and we see how far we can get down the alphabet. And as far as you've got, that's success. If you stay in letter A, letter A, and letter A, and you get upset and you're still at letter A, and everybody is frustrated and you're still at letter A, well, then you shouldn't be conducting, really. You should be doing something else.
All right, so I want to shift now to talk about Rice and this exciting new role that you've taken on at the Shepherd School. So you're currently on the faculty at Baylor. You have led orchestras around the world. And I'm curious about what drew you to Rice, what drew you to the Shepherd School of Music.
Well, I've known of the Shepherd School of Music for decades, and Larry Ratcliffe and I were very good friends, and he was a favorite guest conductor of the Fort Worth Symphony, where I was music director for 20 years, and we had amazing conversations, most of it in Fort Worth or in other festivals that we would run into each other. And I never had the chance to visit the Shepherd School of Music. I've conducted the Houston Symphony a few times, and when I was here, I would just stay across the street and work there, and then be done with my engagement. Many members of the Shepherd School faculty have been colleagues of mine for decades. I mean, Jimmy Lin, Jackie Parker, Richie Hawley and I were classmates. I mean, on our first day at Curtis, Brinton Smith was my principal cello in Fort Worth, and the list goes on. So there was already a built-in relationship from the past and from somewhere else. And then when I performed here with two orchestras back to back, literally, I mean, you finish one and then go to the other one, it was just really a confirmation that everything we have heard about not the perfection, because I want to be clear, there's nobody perfect, starting with me, but that the desire to strive forward and upwards was, in fact, unique and special about a special program at the Shepherd School of Music. And that cannot be explained or quantified in any particular form. Now, the other thing that attracted me is what Rice doesn't have, which is the undergraduate in orchestral conducting, or putting in place very soon. And that brings a bit to show you what I am. I like what is there, but I also like the potential of what can be there. And everywhere I've been throughout my profession, those have been two components. What's the potential, what's amazing, and what has not been done yet that can be greater.
Well, you've given a great example of something to look forward to as the Shepherd School continues to evolve and change. So you'll be conducting a performance, I think, in April with the Shepherd School Symphony Orchestra, and I'm wondering, have you started working with Shepherd School students already? What has that experience been like? If so, just curious about kind of what your involvement has looked like so far.
No, I don't have any teaching duties right now. I'm transitioning, which means I'm overseeing the programming for my first season so that it's in place before I start. And that's something that we're currently doing, literally. And I'm also working on the applications and acceptances and auditions, sorry, for the grad studies in orchestral conducting. And that's all I'm doing right now. And so I'll be here. And I also will be here for a community, what is it called? Community.
I think it's the Peter the Wolf 50th anniversary.
Yeah, exactly. And that's going to be in March. So I'll be here for a brief day, I suppose, and then I'll be back here for a week in April. I say I'm here because I'm actually in my office first time, just for one day.
And then maybe one more question about Rice and Shepherd. What makes, I mean, you are working with students, have worked with students around the world. What makes Shepherd School students so outstanding? What makes Shepherd School students students that you wanted to work with moving forward?
Well, I can't really answer the question as in the past because I haven't started yet. I was here as a guest only. And when you're here as a guest, when you go and visit somebody, you're not looking at their drapes and their paintings, and you just go and enjoy the meal, and and you try to be respectful and have a conversation, and bye-bye. That's my visit here. Only have those memories because that's all I was doing. But what I remember vividly is this attention, because to build in collective attention to work or leadership or guidance is not easy. And many orchestras don't even know how to do it. But when it happens by, I would say, symbiosis or like-minded musicians, even when they can play different instruments, that's when it happens. And it happens when it happens. There's no real explanation, or because there's a legacy that has been, passed on for years, possibly, but people change. People are new every day. Hard to answer your question, but that sense of something unique lives here.
So we mentioned this briefly, but you brought up the that you'll be conducting. I think it's a bilingual production of Peter and the Wolf for the Shepherd School's 50th anniversary Community Day. And we'll just note that is a free to attend concert for listeners in Houston. And I know, this is an example of something I know that you're very committed to and focused on, which is community engagement and really broadening the audience for classical music. Talk to us about that production, why Houstonians who are listening to this podcast should plan to attend.
Well, I created this program when I was music director of the Fort Worth Symphony for second graders. So for second graders, we would play 10 performances a week, sort of 2 back to back, for around 2,000 children every performance. And for them, we added in-school materials so the teachers could, prep them. And then we also included the Texas Ballet Theater. So it was almost like multimedia presentation, but it was the first time a child would have set foot in the concert hall. And I believe that there's only one first time experience. And if that first time experience is like, wow, I'd like to come back, because we cannot afford that, don't bring me back to this. And because we have such a big Hispanic population, but at the same time, Spanish is a language that is being taught to English speaker. I figure out we could enhance the level of music experience through storytelling, language. And this is normal. We speak 2 languages, and it's like the most normal thing to do. So you're opening an invitation through music and through a story and through a piece that doesn't require to be changed. I perform after 15 years for over 250,000 second graders in the Fort Worth area, right? Yes. And then when we went to Carnegie Hall with the Fort Worth Symphony Orchestra, we were invited to play that Peter and the Wolf on a family concert for Carnegie Hall in that same version. And John Lithgow, the actor, was the narrator. And when we met, he said, I would like to do it in Spanish too, because I can do both. Normally you have one Spanish and one English narrator, and then they interact. No, I mean, it's a no-brainer. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just clean it up, enhance it, make it shinier, and you can do wonders. So I thought I would bring this, this idea to Houston and see what happens. Maybe one day it should be done in French and German or English and German. Who knows,
So when we think about expanding the audiences of people who are listening to classical music, I think they're also, I know you're thinking a lot about how we also expand the musicians, the set of musicians who are playing classical music. And when people think about classical music, I think many people may have a certain image in their head of composers or musicians from 200 years ago or from 300 years ago. And so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how we might bring younger people into classical music. You gave, I think, a great example of the Peter and the Wolf series. But I wonder how you think about the ways in which we might bring younger people into classical music, about how we might expand or diversify who is playing, performing, listening to classical music. How are you thinking about creating more opportunities for young people who may have not been exposed to classical music?
David, first of all, I have gotten rid of the term classical music a long time ago because nobody knows even what it means. But if it means a barrier between what we do and what people think we do, we should get rid of the barrier. So first of all, no barriers of any kind. There is good music or there's not. I mean, there's good music in any style, in any form. The advantage I take over having an orchestra is that I can say the orchestra is the most versatile instrument, and we can literally play pretty much any genre of music, including rap, because there are some composers that figure out how to incorporate that into the orchestra. So I take that as my advantage, but I don't like to create labels to what we do. It's just the fascination for an orchestra, which can be really fascinating to a first concert goer, because I mean, there's plenty to see and plenty to hear, that I'd rather start with that. Now, the choice of music, I use a comparison with food. It's like a menu. If you're willing to try the recommendation of the chef, then you have to trust me. But we can also chicken, if that's what you like, we have it there too. The only thing is that you cannot choose the menu necessarily. Is what the chef has cooked for you. And go along those lines. At the same time, in order to do that, I have to be very active, and I love being very active in connecting with non-musicians. As a matter of fact, what I bring to Rise, or what I will be doing at Rise, is what I've been doing officially, since I joined academia, which is I teach musicians, I teach music teachers, and I teach music lovers. Because here at Rice, I will also be working with the Campanile Orchestra, with the non-painters. We all musicians have to know people in every aspect if we want to think about doing what we are just talking about. You cannot have a plan about engaging people in what we do and not be part of it. So in other words, you have to get the hands dirty if you want to, plant the soil. You cannot just direct from above and let others. And that's what's exciting to me.
What about Miguel, the people who are performing? I think, again, when we think about, we have in our minds perhaps what an orchestra looks like, and I know there are a lot of efforts, around the country, around the world, to broaden the set of perhaps young musicians who might be pursuing career pathways into orchestral music. How are you thinking about that, or the things you're working on in that space too?
Well, most of the young people have no idea what happened 200 years ago as far as orchestra or history of our music. So might as well don't even mention that. Start with now. I mean, this is who we are now. This is who you are, you. Hopefully we dressed up in an appealing way. And thank God many orchestras are letting go of the archaic 200 year-old attires that doesn't have a connection. All matters, the environment of going to an event, because we really compete with people's times and attention. And you give me an hour of your time, no, I'd rather send you a check, but I don't want to go. And that has happened, but that's not what we want. So be as available at every possible level, from the way we present, from the way we look, from the way the lights look, from the way the environment, all of it matters. So that what we play can get to people and can touch, if the packaging may not be the right word, but the environment, the wrapping around our music needs to move along as societies evolve. Because I have nothing against recordings, but we have to be very clear that going to a stadium to watch a live football game is not going to be the same when you can pause, get up, and come back, and you get to decide what happens with the outcome. So the experience will always be the best we can give you, from both the music itself and the how we capture you to get the music.
So you're the founder and artistic director of Caminos del Inka, which I believe is a nonprofit that is focused on discovering, preserving, expanding, disseminating the musical legacy of the Americas. What motivated you to found that organization? I'm wondering if you could share some examples of the work that the organization is doing.
Yes. It's not what, it's who. It was Yo-Yo. Yo-Yo Ma told me, you've got all this thing happening. You know, the Silk Road. And he said, the Inka trails. He's like, what do you mean? Yeah, because I had been doing this for a long time, meaning presenting music with orchestras. This is when music from the Americas was really non-existent in the late 90s. I mean, if it wasn't at least from the Latin American composers, maybe Ginastera and maybe Chavez, maybe Villalobos. That's it, 3 composers. But there are like hundreds of composers. And I just brought this to orchestras and chamber orchestras, and without questions. I mean, people were just asking me, sure, bring anything. And it was Yo-Yo who said, there's something bigger and people helped me. I didn't come up with the idea. So friends in Chicago, because that's where Caminos del Inka is incorporated, saw these programs, and a couple of programs were with Yo-Yo and the Chicago Symphony. They helped me build an infrastructure that would hold these ideas, and then they would become realities. So this is now close to 15 years that Inka has been happening at various levels. And it starts with the idea of trails or ways or paths that connect current countries. But poetically, we can say the roads can go beyond. I mean, can cross even the Panama Isthmus and connect the Mesoamerica, or can go even further to Native Americans, or further to the first people in Canada. They all have music. So that's what excites me the most, that we humans have music as part of our being, not because we study it. The human being is made of music. We all have a pulse, which is our heart, and they all are different. We have rhythms, because otherwise we won't be able to coordinate things. And we have an instrument, which is our voices. All of them are unique to us. So to me, if the human body and the human being are close to music, then we should embrace music and make it part of who we are.
Yeah. And are there any opportunities you're seeing ahead around your new role at Rice connecting to that work? I'm thinking about the diversity of Houston and the significant Latin American population that is connected to Houston. I'm just curious about any connections you're excited about there.
I'm thinking that as a matter of fact, Houston is a physical gateway to South, to all of Latin America South, and of course it can connect further, up to further North America. And it's like a no-brainer. We are sitting both locally to a community that is incredibly rich and diverse, and I'm looking forward to explore more. As I said, I don't know Houston yet, but we have those 2 things. We have the local and the gateway, to do this.
So one last question, and then we're going to go to maybe a quick lightning round to wrap up our conversation. Miguel. So you recently made your debut at the Metropolitan Opera with Golohov's Anna Amor, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what that experience was like. Is there a difference between conducting? We sort of started with this conversation talking a bit about the experience of conducting an opera. Is there a difference between conducting an opera, conducting an orchestra? Tell us a little bit about that experience at the Met.
Well, there are only a few technical differences, but that's about it. Once you conduct music, you conduct music. And my role is exactly the same in any, whether I'm in the pit, whether I'm on stage, whether it's a large or a small orchestra or professional or student, my role never changes. It's only the what is the music that I'm working with. But my experience at the Metropolitan Opera was incredibly humbling. I mean, I've learned so much from all my colleagues and other conductors because it's one of the few places in the world in which you have 4 or 5 or 6 conductors conducting at the same time in different venues. And I spent time with Yannick Nesetsegan, with Marco Armiliato, with Jan Zhang. I mean, and we are all in the same room. Like we have the same green room. And that's, unusual anywhere. And also I feel honored that I was asked, to do a new production at the Met. So I'm hoping that I can contribute to the artistic and musical legacy of such an opera house. So the two extremes of emotions all the time have been with me throughout my pretty much 2 months of that production.
So Miguel, I'm interested in hearing your perspective on the role that universities, music schools, conservatories have in expanding the set of young people who are pursuing careers and fields in music. You mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, having a door that young people can walk through. Talk a little bit more about how you think about that in your role.
In the current times that we live in the 21st century and with the technologies that we have available to connect throughout the world, I think creating the doorway, it's both literally a door to get into a building, but also a virtual door to expose, first of all, what a musician is and what life as a musician is as well. And because we see somebody performing surgery doesn't mean we know the life of a surgeon, In creating more of that, in promoting that gateway is there early on rather than wait until you're out of high school before you dare coming to my building. Now, and the one way I do this personally is by keeping in touch with the younger crowd. I visit high schools, middle schools. I just did my first all-state high school orchestra in Lincoln, Nebraska. I know Rice probably doesn't need me to do. I need me to do those things because I'm creating literal gateways. And I tell the kids, you know how to find me? And guess what? Instagram, we already follow you. Okay, that's a gateway for them. And if we keep up with their doorways, then we're going to be of help to them. If we keep in our own world only, and I work on a desk, you have to drive here or fly here, make an appointment. If you need me, then we're going to start removing ourselves from the current generation. And, our children are at that age, finishing high school and just recent graduates of colleges. So we have learned a lot from them, more than they probably have learned from us as parents. And if that continues, not because our children are outside the household, doesn't mean I've stopped learning from the younger generations. So I think we musicians should keep an eye and be in touch with them. We, as parents or teachers, should listen more and say more. If we don't listen first, then we shouldn't say too much at first because we can either scare them or confuse them.
Okay, so we at the end we have 3 lightning round questions. These are questions that we've asked in each interview this season of the podcast. And the first one maybe is not a fair question to ask you, given that you're not formally 100% in this role yet. But first, what is your favorite spot on the Rice campus?
Oh, I can tell you that. It's the window I have behind me. Right now it's dark, but the fact that my studio has an open window to green, that's it.
That's great. Okay, second, what's the best book that you've read recently?
Originals by Adam Grant.
Okay, tell us about it. Tell us about it.
No. By the way, it was one of your guests mentioned another book by Adam Grant.
About Adam Grant? Yeah.
Again, exactly. Originals. Highly recommended for everybody because every person is original if you find your originality. Great book.
All right. And then the last question this is a very Rice question. So when students apply to Rice, they are presented with the box. And the box is a question on the application where they're asked to share an image of something that appeals to them, that shares something about themselves, their interest, something that's meaningful to them. And I'm curious, what image would you put in your box?
It would be a stream, like a river, but a slow flow stream because it's calm above, but underneath it's moving and it's full of life that we don't see. And it's that mystery that you don't know what's there.
Well, Miguel, this has been such a fun conversation. It's really an honor to spend time with you today. And so excited for this new role that you have at the Shepherd School. As you know well, the Shepherd School has such a legacy of incredible musicians and conductors, and so excited about the future of the school under your leadership, leading so much of that important work. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, David. I'm thrilled, excited, honored, and humbled to join the Rice family.
Awesome.